How's it going? Great night so far, hey? Wonderful. Yeah. It's all going downhill now. That's great. So I've been touring with my band in England for the last 3 weeks, and I got back about a week ago, and so it's so nice to hear and do poetry, because folk music is not that sometimes, so it's really nice. I thought I actually would start with a love poem, oddly, and then we can just go like down the emotional spectrum from there, but we'll start happy, I guess. It goes like this. In shifts along the hearth of your body, I dig through the things on fire in you and find what I cannot lose. Beneath the slip, the dashed sheet, our hush of tethered legs softly coaxes the quiet of me. There's deep dreaming to be done at the heart of things, where the mind, steeled against the guts in the traffic of the world, stops its nattering and sees. Your breath bared on my breast is your body incarnate on my body. I feel the deep machinery of you working against the world, mincing potential accidents through to arrive at me. The blades of your shoulders pierce my hands. I hold you like this, as if from the lip of the cliff, because the gift of your body reminds me how real the rocks can be, how quickly we could slip. Every morning we wake up to be made by the steady burn of experience, the soldiering in of events to form of us new shapes. We're not shucked and lopped suddenly free into the world. We're nudged. Through constant new things we graze, guided as if we knew events. They look the same. We say roads and stores and rooms, the people for whom our love makes us quake, and we think we know them. Their smell does not surprise, their voice lulled long ago into memory, their smile is a homecoming. We don't notice how that house is never quite the same. We can't really remember what it is to be alive. It would require bearing witness to the brilliant cacophony in every turn of our head. The reveal of each new scene and sense would bring a hammering wonder. We'd have to stand before it like some tear in the universe, give thanks for every breath, as if for the life of every friend, the world to the brim, teams and teams. And our leaving, the clutch and grasp of every human being would only bring more oceans and more new things, and if not oceans, more new things. This thimble of history we could not point to with a pin. We exist most closely relative to nothing. And still, I feel I can shock a mountain to the ground. I feel moved at the entry to your mouth as before a trove, though it will soon be catacomb, though your skin will soon be feast for the soil and small beasts that breathe there. Still, for every graceless stranger waiting to hide you in their negligence, I promise the thrust of my attention will fire you like pinballs into lighted faces. I'm going to put my hands on you so much you'll remember your body for the rest of your life. You guys are going to be easy. That's good. It's the most foolish thing to believe, but despite the coming clouds, I count these feelings blessed. And lashing out against the horrible roll of history, I fasten the window and I silence the light, and I raise my last hands against the coming of the world by wandering them free over the outline of your aching frame. Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be back here and to go to Foodland. It sucks when you get into town and you haven't done anything like meaningful yet, and so you have to be like, all I've done is gone to Foodland, but I'm sure we have time. Yeah, it's true. It was a lovely walk. That's right. It's true. A little cold, but it was lovely. Yeah. I toured with this folk artist named Dan Byrne a while ago. I don't know if anyone knows who he is, but he writes really kind of meandering songs. And what he does is he wakes up every morning, even on the tour, and he wakes up at 7 in the morning to write a new song. It's really annoying if you're touring with someone. Just to see how fucking productive they are. And how unproductive you are not. Because every song he writes is a song you did not write, and then by the end of the tour it's 40-0 and you're like, ah. And I asked him, I was like, what is the secret to this incredible work ethic? And he just said, oh man, you just gotta like write. And So I actually took this advice. This is the only song I've ever written according to that advice, and I just wrote it in a day. And then I didn't write another one for like 40 days, but I got through one of them. So it is a little meandering. In grade 4, I wrote a story called A Beaver Who Lost His Teeth, about a beaver who lost his teeth so he couldn't cut down trees. Then one day in the woods, he was shot at by a hunter. In surprise, the beaver jumped up and hit the tree with his tail, and the tree fell on the hunter. So the beaver saw that he could cut down trees with his tail, so the problem was resolved. This isn't realistic. In real life, some obstacles prove taxing, and if you're a beaver without teeth, you're probably screwed. You certainly couldn't cut down trees by chopping at them with your tail. It's a tail, not a chainsaw. Did I write this story on drugs? No. I was 9. But kids have a lot in common with people on drugs. Like how they laugh and stare off into space till you're like, kid, are you stoned? Why are you so happy? Why are you giggling at the dumpster or awing at the floor? Kid, are you there? A beaver without teeth is gonna die, gonna die, gonna die. We're all gonna die. It's my happy song. In adolescence, Bertrand Russell would go off to a hillside, watch the sunset, and then think about committing suicide. But he didn't kill himself, and the reason that he gave was, and I quote, "I wish to learn more mathematics," which is sad. Because there's more to life than mathematics, like sex and drugs and rock and roll, or just hanging out with your mom. Bertrand Russell turned out to be someone Nelson Mandela admired and looked up to. Man, how great must you be for a man like Mandela to think that you were greater if he thought the same of me. I would brag to every girl. So hey, teenager, don't get too excited by your acne or your voice change or the cruelty of your peers. As you deal with enough hormones to take down a small animal, sit back, relax, think of math. We'll see you on the other side. When my grandfather died, his funeral was at a church, and the thing about a church is no one goes there anymore. And if nobody goes, how will we socialize with elders? Because there are so few forums for the young and old alike. If the young and the old aren't in communication, who will talk about the future with a reference to the past? And who will talk about the past with a view towards the future? If I did not know my grandfather, what will I live without? I can best recall one thing. It was the sound he made when we played chess. He'd stare hard at the board, and whenever someone moved, he'd say, It was the sound of paying attention, and attention stems from love. So hey, grandfather, though we have no similarities, I've been passed on by the body, it's been passed on through you. Hey, grandfather, the earth is rushing back for me, and I don't believe in deities, but I wish I could see you on the other side. To level with you, I was feeling really emotional when I got here, and I was trying to figure out why that was, like overtly, like. And then I realized it's because my friend who's had cancer for the last 2 years, we do this thing. She lives in Goderich, and she's had to stay with her parents because of blah, 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 blah. And we do this thing where Toronto's too intense for her when she's going through all this stuff, and then she doesn't want to be with her parents anymore than you have to, because, you know, she's an adult. And so we do this thing where we meet up in areas kind of like in rural Ontario. So we went to Owen Sound one weekend, we went to Elora for another weekend. So we do these like kind of getaways. And it's just like, it's a tough time, right, when you're watching someone do all that stuff. So this is I wrote this poem for that, and the thing that, the toughest thing I think that struck me about doing the whole thing, everyone has done this process probably with someone, was not some of the mortality stuff, but more the like when, as a friend, you push people who are really ill to keep doing their treatment and be strong in spite of it. So, this poem is about that thing. And so I'll do this poem, then I'll feel better and it'll be good. Yeah. Okay. Questions for you and I when you have cancer. Besides the obvious, the way every well-wisher's eyes clock your body's recession back to bone, besides how you watch this and they watch you watch this in these masquerade party visits where we all wear gowns, besides the drugs and fatigue and worry and sleep and surgery and chemotherapy and drugs and lack of sleep, besides the spirits stop and go in the hurry up and wait of 1,000 hospitals, you call your healthcare card platinum, besides the jokes and the constant thrum of fear that plays on the good days you're alive enough to dance again into the bright ballroom of your mind. The question, if cancer doesn't stop us from being ourselves, if we're still the fumbling mistakes we've always ever woken up to, how then to deal with this cannonball circumstance and the hole it has made of the way we used to smile? What if you and I alone in the rural hotel rooms we go to escape nurses? What if we have to talk about this, but you're still you, always dodging direct questions from a dwindling store of jokes, and I'm still me, I'm always pushing you to talk through the muzzle, the ache places over every pleasure, knowing I can never do enough for you, that for you, enough would be at least to trade you some of the suffering. At meals, I dive on our shared utensils like a fish flaying itself on a hook, trying to steal away some of the sick, but it never gives. How much bigger proof could there be you are apart from me? That we, friends for God knows, must be strangers in this. I simply cannot fathom the pain, the sheer slog of it. What a lie it is they tell us about strength. Seeing them shell your body with drugs, kill you to make you stronger, not like a shirt or a bumper sticker, but actually a real thing they do. That chipper timer going off again and again for more of your million pills. As you erode to shell on the bed, strength seems like a lie sold to children. And still, I look sometimes, the tiring will behind your eyes, and see it's what you need to be pushed when you are full up of every pain, to just hold tight one last time, again and again and again. Who am I, healthy as the first day of spring, to ask you to try harder? Sometimes it seems friends are not friends at all. Sometimes it seems we are hunters. High on horses are shots, the sick gifts that fire you through the cruel chase of being alive. They make you need to fight. And so you see how there is no choice. I can't just quit asking. It turns out I am the one with his hands out. I am the child crying. I, the weeping prayer in the street. You, the deliverer, and I, the received. So give me what I want. More time. Come with me to the future. It is a clearing. The horizon never shifts on all sides it goes on. The vastness. There's nothing to do with it but whatever you will want. Thanks. All right. All right, sorry, I kiboshed my own set with emotion there, okay. Cool, so the latest publication I have out is a monologue called Brain, and so it's about mental illness and consciousness, like both the miracle and the like disaster that is consciousness, and friendship and a bunch of stuff. So it's 55 minutes of me blabbing, as interesting as that sounds. And don't worry, I will not do that all right now. But kind of like people read excerpts from books, I thought I would do like a brief kind of 3-part excerpt from that monologue so you can kind of get the sense of that thing. And then, yeah, you can read the rest if you like, or you could just not. I don't know, whatever. So I'll just dive into that. And so and then we'll do something else. Cool. A couple of years ago, I got a call from an acting agency. They're like, you should come in. We'd like to talk to you about some roles. I'm like, I don't act. They're like, don't worry about it. We think you have a look. And in my head, I was like, oh, I guess I'm the hottest. So I go in there, it's exactly as you expect. My agent's very dressed up, she's very serious-minded. She welcomes me into this luxurious office. There's like photos on the wall with her with like B-list Canadian celebrities, like, ooh, Jason Priestley. And she sits down across from me and she says very seriously, she's like, I wanted to talk to you. And I'm like, yes? She's like, I wanted to talk to you about your face. And then I'm like, yes? And then she says, you have the most generic face I've ever seen. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, has it ever happened to you? You're walking around somewhere and someone's like, hey, I know you from somewhere. I'm like, no, not really. She's like, exactly, because you look like everyone. She's like, you're perfect for commercials. You could be a young, proud father. You could be a tax attorney. You could be the guy at the football game. I'm like, I could be those things, but I don't act. She's like, you don't have to act. You just walk in, you show them your generic face, boom, gold mine. In junior high, I looked exactly the same. I've had the same haircut since I was like 5 years old. To imagine me as a teenager, you have to shrink me, plus up on a pair of braces. There you have it, the most bland, generic-looking kid of all time. So it was actually kind of hard to bully because there's nothing to really bully me about. I was like a wall or a piece of furniture. Thing is, I didn't even know I had a generic face. I had nowhere near this level of self-awareness. Instead, as I'm going through school and everywhere around me, people are getting like thrown into lockers and wedged in the shower and beat up physically, but worse, emotionally, just called the meanest things. And I'm just coasting along like the privileged, middling non-entity I was so glad to be. I chalked all this good luck up to the fact that I believed in God. And to make sure I stayed on God's good side, I started praying more and more intensely and more often. First on every walk to the bus stop, then on the walks there and back, then in between classes, then during classes. And here's the thing about praying in public, you can't technically do it. It says right in the Bible, when you pray, go into your room and close the door, then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. So to make my jive with my already pretty rigorous praying schedule, I decided to start saying my prayers silently, inside my head, but with my inner voice still striving for a particular level of perfection where I enunciated flawlessly without stumbling, like our Father who art in heaven. In grade 7, I first took biology. I learned this amazing fact about the brain. We have 100 billion brain cells, and our neurons fire 200 times a second, and each neuron is connected to 1,000 other neurons. So by multiplying 100 billion by 200 firings by 1,000 connections, you get that the brain does 20 million billion calculations per second, which is amazing, but doesn't actually mean that much. I was still sitting at my desk like, I like ham. When I got inside my brain and started to try to pray perfectly, that's when I first experienced the vast potentiality of the brain, because for every prayer, my mind would break it down into milliseconds and milliseconds and milliseconds until it found some tiny mistake, a split second of imprecision or inattention or bad pronunciation. I'd have to start all over again. And all this happened without my consciously acknowledging what I was trying to do was impossible. It always seemed like I was about to think the perfect prayer, and I just missed it. So I'd do one more, and then just one more, and just one more, on and on and on. It got to be, I couldn't sleep. It was just so impossible to stop. My memory of those years is just a wash of ceaseless, unrelenting prayer, repeating and repeating and repeating this litany of loneliness, no longer begging the listening God to protect or console or help me, but only to please let me get it right. The first person ever showed me the internet was my dad, which is amazing because he's the most technologically useless person I've ever met. He's just now, like last year, coming around to the idea that he can send email not just from his computer, but any computer. Getting my parents on Skype is the best because my mom is way ahead of him. She knows how to change their video display. She's always putting like cat noses on his face and birthday hats on his head. Her favorite is to activate the lightning strike, which is a thunderbolt that pops up on the Skype screen and hits him in the head. And it's the best because he'll actually react in real life. He'll be like, stop that, stop that. I'm like, no, Dad, the camera's like inside the computer. He's like, stop that. So it's amazing to me, there's a 1 month window when I was in high school where he knew more about computers than I did. He sat me down in front of whatever Google was before Google. He's like, type something, it'll give you the answer. So I typed in Victoria, because that's where I was moving at the end of the year from Calgary to go to university. Of course, the first thing to come up on the internet is Victoria's Secret. Awkward when you're sitting there with your dad. You're like, lingerie would be interesting, but I'm not a sexual human being. So we go down to the second one, it's this Victoria Tourism City page, and we read up together about some facts about the city, population, climate. We found this weird municipal law that street entertainers in Victoria are not allowed to give balloon animals to kids. My dad, a true conservative, was like, makes sense. When I moved to university, I'd fallen out of touch with God, which makes sense. A lot of people at that age fall out of touch with God. Critical thinking develops in our prefrontal cortex, the very last part of the teenage brain to mature. Which is not to say that religion requires a lack of critical thinking, just the time in your life when you're first learning to weigh hypotheses and balance arguments is the time you're going to be most prone to doubt. So to fill that kind of like moral vacuum in my life, I decided to study philosophy, moral philosophy. Major reason being, other than like mad cash, was to find a suitable ethical system to stop all this from happening. At first, I was really into it. It's exactly that. You get asked these classic moral questions and you get to decide what to do, how to make the world a better place. So like one of the first you get is the trolley problem, which goes like this. There's a runaway train barreling down some tracks, and there's 5 people who are tied to the tracks, and you are standing next to a lever which can switch the tracks. But the catch is there's another person tied to those tracks. So you have to decide what to do. Do nothing and let 5 people die, or pull a lever and kill one. Now, usually in a situation, you go with pulling a lever, makes intuitive sense. Killing one person is not the highlight of the day, but it's better than watching 5 die. But then they start piling alternatives on you. They're like, what if you're not just pulling a lever and you're actively committing murder? You have to push a fat man off the bridge onto the tracks and he stops the train. And what if the fat man is a saint and the 5 people on the tracks are total dicks? What if you can derail a train and it goes down a hill into a yard where a man is sleeping in a hammock and he gets killed? What about then? Is it fair to kill an innocent bystander? And what about privilege, the gender, age, education, race of all the people involved? Like, how does that affect your mind state and what does that say? Like, what if you can hit all 5 and they survive and they go to the hospital and they're all on life support and they each require a different organ transplant, and then a man walks in with all 5 available organs? What do you do then? Do you kill him? What if he's homeless? What if he's Gandhi? You want to kill Gandhi? I really started to hate philosophy. It only clarified what I was trying to avoid, the infinite complexity of moral questioning. Worse, it made those problems abstract, when morality is exactly the opposite. So fast forward 3 more months, I'm lying in bed beside my girlfriend, I'm feeling her just start to drift off, when she suddenly pulls back and she stares at me. She says, "What's happening? Your heart is beating so fast, I was falling asleep and it woke me up. What's going on?" What's going on is I'd become obsessed with these very violent, very disturbing images. The moral vacuum had been filled by this conviction that I was gonna do something terrible and there was nothing out there to stop me. So just like in junior high when I performed hours and hours of prayer while going to school and playing sports, I was now doing the same in university, living this dual life of inner anxious repetition while outside trying to maintain a flat line. Which is why my girlfriend scared the crap out of me. When she pulled back and asked me what's going on, it broke that divide. It meant these thoughts, which I'd been fighting to convince myself were entirely made up, were starting to influence my outside world. And if they could do that, what was to stop them from having more and more of an effect? Like if already I couldn't control them, would I end up acting on them? I had to tell my girlfriend something, and since I wasn't going to give her the content of the thoughts, I just made up some neutral, clinical sounding answer, like, "I'm having intrusive ideas which make me feel disquieted." It's the most cryptic thing you can possibly tell someone. Luckily, she was a saint about it, really great, especially for someone so young. She was supportive, she was non-judgmental, she was great. She was studying kinesiology. A couple weeks later, she called me, she's like, "Hey, I think we're studying something in class, which reminds me of what you say happens with your thoughts." She said there's this mental illness where someone gets a negative thought and it repeats in their head on a feedback loop and you can't stop it. It's called obsessive compulsive disorder. Which made me skeptical because I'd heard about this vaguely, the kind of people who have to wash their hands all the time, or like Jack Nicholson's character in As Good as It Gets, where he couldn't step on the different colored sidewalk parts. Like, don't get me wrong, I wanted an illness, I craved an illness. Anything that explained that I wasn't a monster was cool by me. But I was also a bit egotistical about my suffering. If I did have a disorder, I wanted something hardcore, like schizophrenia. Obsessive compulsive disorder just sounded silly, like, "Man, my foot, the sidewalk." But I started doing my own research and I found this thing called pure O, which is a derivative of OCD where you can have obsessions with no physical manifestations, which was just like me. So to confirm, I went to one of the free psychologists at the university residence. I didn't tell him what I'd been studying, I just described the very general pattern of my thinking, and of his own accord, he was like, "Sounds like OCD." I never remember anything. Like if I take out a library book, it is mine forever. But I remember that meeting, to hear a psychologist, someone who's gone to school for a decade to study psychological distress, confirm to my face I had an illness, verifiable, certifiable, real, honest to goodness illness that meant I was not, despite my own best attempts to convince myself, a monster. The relief. It's unlike anything I've ever felt. It's almost worth going through all that just to feel so amazing. I shook that doctor's hand, I went outside, it was morning, there was a sheet of mist across the cars. I walked back across campus crying, reveling in the euphoria of being able, for the first time in so long, to relax. I actually put my fist up into the sky, like the guy at the end of the Breakfast Club. And I kind of caught myself halfway, like, it was pretty dumb. But I just kept going, because anything, right? That's the feeling you get, anything. I can do anything now. And that's the end of that excerpt, and it gets a lot harder after that. It's not actually the ending of the play, but that's... So thank you. Do one more poem, and then maybe we'll end with some singing. I'm like, as if you guys have to do it. I'm like, he's singing. I will sing too, but maybe you will sing too. So here's a Canada 150 poem. I was asked to do one Canada 150 poem, and as we all know, it's a very tricky beast, Canada 150. So I would tour across the country this summer with the orchestra, a national youth orchestra, that was doing a celebration of Zacchaeus Jackson's work. I don't know if you had Zacchaeus Jackson ever at Words Aloud. No, I don't know. He was a really good friend of some of the people in the audience tonight, a poet who passed away a couple of years. And so this poem is, he's a First Nation poet. He had a rough kind of teenage adolescence, and he would speak very openly about that to students. And I watched him in schools, like super amazing guy, like just amazing at like just telling everyone where he was from and being like, you can, and just like with the power of his spirit, just being like, just motivating students unlike anything I've seen. It's amazing. So this poem is about him, and I was also asked to tie that into truth and reconciliation. And mainly, this is aimed at white people, and what we as white people can and should be doing more of in Canada. I think 150 is very tricky because it's tricky, right? They call it a celebration, and like even that framing, 150 celebration, it's already erasing what's come before those two words, as if it started there and you have to celebrate that, and there's nothing nuanced about that to me. So I thought it was that part is something. So anyways, this is that piece. My friend said, don't run. Where you're headed has already happened. If you go there without looking back, the same traps will snatch, the same blood will bleed again. My friend said, turn around. Having made a home of jail, having lost jobs and friends, sick in the arms of strangers because he could let go of loved ones but not a pipe, my friend took the worst of his life and weaved it into the rhymes that would bomb from his mouth and explode in the ears of students and send them flying back onto the right path. He said, every life lacks grace. The mistake is to pretend not to remember. To remember is not just to say, in our past, they trained guns on kids, marched them from their homes, taught them to cheat their own tongues. A new nation shoved down their throat until every word they spoke was treason. To remember is to bring the full force of this fact alive. Let it thunder through our minds and make a mess. Define so starkly the distance between where we come from and what we pretend we are. The easy lies of history start to light us up like fireworks on a fake birthday in an occupied sky until that fire rocks us into something braver, until we stand before the vertigo of the mirror and acknowledge how little we still do to stop the bleeding, until we commit finally to actually being guests. Cross the threshold, take a seat, and listen long enough to the gnashing teeth of history to finally make out the melody of our mistakes, find the harmony, and do the hard work of playing our parts, so that the sound of so many nations forced into one stops being a howling and becomes a new song, strong enough to carry across a landscape of broken villages and be sung as a new adventure between neighbors. My friend said the sound of stolen land is silence, so he never shut up. Living microphone, tornado of language, bullhorn, fire alarm drum. He's still with us in the wind when our pace picks up, reminding us not to run. Thanks. Okay, so you guys want to do some like really subversive sing-along that has lots of swears, or do you want to do something like wholesome and nice and folky? Really? Okay. I mean, I can't do this song and then you'd be like, well, I don't like that song. You just ask for a subversive song with sing-along with lots of swears. Okay, all right. And we'll do the swear version too, because there is a clean version, but it's really weird. Okay, not the same. Well, that's great. I was expecting you to say wholesome. There's nothing wrong with a wholesome sing-along too. It's fine. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll, I don't know how many time for time, but maybe we'll do them both. Okay, we'll see how we feel at the end of this one. Then. One of my best friends, I'll just put this out before I do this poem. One of my best friends in the whole world is a Catholic, and he is entering the monastery in January to become a monk and give up all his earthly possessions. So, I have no issues with Catholics as an individual. So, it's just more this song is aimed at the infrastructure, and in particular the lead of the infrastructure. No matter how much they try to say nice things about the new pope, who's supposed to be more progressive than the last pope. I mean, that's just saying the last pope just cut off 4 of your arms, and so now this one only cuts off 1 arm. Not that you only have 4 arms, but anyways, you know what I'm saying? It's just so. I just think if you led a huge organization like the Catholic Church, I think the most baseline thing was if you were just as nice as a friend of mine. That's all I thought. So that's what I thought of when I wrote this chorus, which goes like this, and it's a sing-along. Everyone I know is nicer than the Pope, nicer than the Pope, oh Lord. See? Everyone I know is nicer than the Pope, nicer than the Pope, oh Lord. Okay, cool. This might work, okay. I once knew this guy's just a total fucking dick. He kicked his little brother off a swing when he was 6. His brother broke his arm, he didn't admit it, and kept on living life without the slightest bit of guilt. But at least he didn't cover up sex abuse cases when he was an archbishop in Buenos Aires. Yeah, at least he didn't fail to apologize to the victims. So who's a dick? Yeah, who's a dick? Everyone I know is nicer than the Pope, nicer than the Pope, oh Lord. We're all going to hell. Everyone I know is nicer than the Pope, nicer than the Pope, oh Lord. All right. I once knew this guy's just a total fucking knob. He made fun of his girlfriend when she broke her arm. She had to wear a bag in the shower on her wrist. He laughed and told her that she looked foolish, but at least he wasn't a total fucking sexist who repudiates abortion for being symptomatic of a culture of death and calls nuns radical feminists for supporting contraception and gay marriage. So who's a dick? Yeah, who's a dick? And okay, it was me who injured my brother. Okay. I also made fun of my girlfriend's arm. But Numbers 9 verse 11 says your sins will find you out. And Hebrews 9 verse 23, there's no forgiveness without the shedding of blood. And since I don't oppose condoms and therefore help the threat of HIV, and since I'm not sitting in a literal castle of gold while women get abortions in back alleys, I will call on Revelations 11 verse 19, which says, behold heaven open, and then a white horse in righteousness he judges and makes robed. He is clothed in a robe dipped in blood, and the name by which he's called is the Word of God. And the armies of heaven, adorned in fine linen, white and pure, followed him on white horses. From his mouth comes a sharp sword to strike down nations. He will rule them all with a rod of iron. He will tread the winepress of the fury of the wrath of God, the Almighty. And so who's a dick now? Who's a dick now? Who's a motherfucking piece of shit dick now? Who's a dick now? Who's a dick now? Who's a motherfucking piece of shit? You can probably guess the answer. Everyone I know is nicer than the Pope, oh Lord. Just you guys. Everyone I know is nicer than the Pope, nicer than the Pope, oh Lord. That was amazing. You want? Okay. We can't end on that though. It's too weird. I would feel. It's like, yeah, and then he just he screamed, motherfucking piece of shit dick, and then the set was on. Thanks. All those hard years of writing, and nothing sticks with you but motherfucking piece of shit. Okay, so do you want to come? Jillian and I come sometimes do this song together. So Jillian is, if you're not familiar, this is just Jillian Christmas. She's doing the Sunday show and also a great workshop on Saturday. Yeah. So this song is called All This Trouble in the World, and it was actually written because I had a fight in my mind with a baby, because I was going down the street in a car, and this baby like made a face into the car, and it was just a baby, and then I was, when you're just wrapped up in it was just a baby, and you just know you're wrapped up in your own world, and then I was having a bad day and I took it out on that baby. I'm like, that stupid baby hates me, and I'm like, I hate that baby. And I started like listing all the things in my head that I could do that a baby couldn't. And I was like, look, baby, here's an apple, where to go? You don't even know, here it is again. And like, and then you're like, I should probably just relax and like, just be grateful for life. And so this song is called All This Trouble, and the chorus is all this trouble in the world, let it come, but it does not refer to massive problems like Donald Trump or something. That is bigger than this song. It is the smaller thing. It's just about like, I tripped over my shoe, or like whatever. So that's what you're singing when you sing the chorus. Yeah, all this, yeah. So, and anyways, before the end, thank you so much for having me back. It's really nice to be back, and such a like no one ever sings along with a Pope song like that. It's yeah, you do, but then, yeah, sometimes it's so lonely, and I've almost stopped doing it, and then now I'm gonna do it again. 4 people are gonna sing, and I'm gonna miss you guys. Yeah, okay, yeah. All this trouble in the world, let it come, let it come. All this trouble in the world, let it come. Let it come. Should I do a verse? The infirm all alone by the window in their beds. The fears that are real, the doubts just in our heads. Starting to remember we've forgotten what was said. All our problems always. Chasing the life partner who will never wear the ring. The song that you cherish, the notes too high to sing. The child on the playground pushed too far up in the swing. All our problems always, all this trouble in the world, let it come, let it come. All this trouble in the world, let it come, let it come.
I do not need to tell you that you are enough. You already know that everything that you are is all that you need. Even though the weight of this world might sometimes bring you down to your knees, you must believe. The poet Rumi once said, "What do you know of your yet undiscovered beauty? One of these days you will rise from within yourself like a sun." So I offer you these words from my own heart, lips, and tongue. If you look around you and everything is burning, licked in flames upreaching like a funeral pyre, check if you are breathing. If you are, it stands to reason that perhaps you're not the kindling, you're the fire.
But it is the softness of our skins against the sharp edge of a knife, the regiments of day versus the pleasures of the night. It is the certainty of death and the passion for this life. All our problems always, all this trouble in the world, let it come, let it come. All this trouble in the world, let it come, let it come. Just you guys now.
All this trouble in the world, let it come, let it come.
All this trouble in the world, let it come, let it come. Thank you guys very much. That was awesome. Thanks, Jillian. That's beautiful.